All right, everybody, welcome back to another Shots from the Winchester podcast presented by Greencastle. Today I have with me John. Hey, John, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. We're in the Winchester, so that means we have to do a shot. So
Yes.
what are we going to do a shot of here?
We got some sparkling water today, so
Yeah.
let's do it.
We've got a Waterloo and Polar.
And Polar.
Yeah, all right. So
Cheers.
Cheers to Greencastle.
Greencastle.
And by the way, these are non-alcoholic seltzers, so
It's true.
they're pretty good. So we're interviewing John today because he works at Greencastle, which is awesome. So I'd love to talk first about your experience as a veteran and your military experience. So do you want to tell the audience, your military background?
Sure. I joined the Air Force right out of high school. Honestly, I was more afraid of college than I was basic training. So, and it was also the Transformers movie. The very first Transformers movie came out like a year before I left. So I'm not gonna lie, whoever was involved in making that movie a recruiting movie, which it probably was, they did a good job. Because I never really thought about joining the military until I saw that job, saw that movie. So I joined the military right out of high school, and went to Lackland down in San Antonio, Texas. Did my basic training there, and then Shepherd Air Force Base was my next assignment for tech school. And then I was sent to Minot, North Dakota after that, which was, let me see if I remember this right. It was 40 minutes from the Canadian border and then 40 miles from the geographic center of the continent. So
Really?
I was as far away from seafood as you could possibly get out there, which really was trouble. Every time I came home for leave, Mom, Dad, we got to get some seafood. Please, I want some fresh sushi. So...
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, North Dakota, out there in Minot, it gets really cold out there.
Yeah.
The coldest temperature I ever saw was negative 60 degrees. out
Negative
there.
60?
Negative 60.
And so you can't have any skin exposed. I assume you're just bundled up, right?
Yeah. You're bundled up so much. I mean, the wind cuts through anything you're wearing. It chills you to the bone.
Yeah.
It's the kind of cold your ancestors feel.
Yeah.
It's punishingly cold.
Wow.
So
I do have a question, actually, because I'm Army, so life's a little different.
yeah.
Tell me about Air Force basic training. What do you do? I really don't think I've ever asked anybody that. What do you do at basic training? How does that look?
So I don't remember when exactly, but when I went, it was still 8 weeks. Now it's 6 weeks. So it's been going through a little bit of a transition. The Air Force is indeed a little bit more corporate than the other branches. So there's a very heavy emphasis on academics and learning bookish stuff in Air Force basic training. But the experience was still very, at least when I went, very, very aggressive. Lots of yelling, lots of PT. You get smoked when you make mistakes, I should say. So there was a lot of academics, but there also was a lot of combat type familiarization and training. We learned our combatives. We learned self-aid and buddy care. We learned basic medical, how to fire a weapon, of course. We all qualified with the M16 platform. And then, how to disassemble your M16, things like that. So there was a little bit of combat and deployment type training when I was going through. Now I think with the current environment that we're in, I think there's less of that happening in basic training, but I don't know for sure. I know when I went, they were still pretty heavy on teaching combat and combatives and things like that.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. Okay. Huh, surprising. I honestly I didn't know that, but it kind of makes sense. I like that you said more corporate. That's a really nice way to say it, right?
It's very the Air Force is very, very nerdy. It is bookish. It really is. I was lucky enough to interact with the other branches when I was in, and the branches all definitely have their own. What word would you use? Personality.
Yes, personality. Yep.
Yeah.
Characteristics. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so then what job did you have in the Air Force? What did you go to school for there?
When I was in the Air Force, I worked in a command and control center. So all the different streams of information would come into my office, and then we were charged with disseminating that out. So commanders would call us. They would need information right now. Our job was to give it to them right now. And then just keeping track of everything, making sure everything was squared away, kind of like what we do here at Greencastle. We facilitate solutions where we transfer information around to the right place. We're not exactly making decisions, we're making very informed recommendations so that our clients, our commanders, whoever's receiving that information has the most up-to-date information.
That makes sense. So how did you find Greencastle then? Because just to remind the audience, everybody that works here is a veteran or has to have served. So how did you come across Greencastle?
I was very fortunate that Jeff and Troy reached out to me on LinkedIn, and that's really it. They said, "Hey, I see you're a vet. You got cool looking skills on your LinkedIn here," and yeah, just really that's it. They
You're in
reached
the
out
Air
to.
Force. We know you're smart.
Well, maybe, yeah.
And so what do you do here? What's your job?
So kind of similar to what I did in the Air Force. I'm a business intelligence analyst. Clients are going to come to me and the other members of my team with a little bit more technical type problems. And through our knowledge of Power BI platforms, automated systems, Power Apps, a whole lot of deeper set Microsoft Suite programs, we can take a little bit more of their technical problems and find them a little bit more technical solutions, while at the same time making those consulting type recommendations. Like, hey, I think this series of connected platforms would solve your technical issue or your process issue that you have here. And it's a little bit less like project facilitation, a little bit more improving in a way, and really paying attention to a little bit more technical aspects of their problems.
That was a really graceful way to explain that. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I actually want to backtrack a little bit before we get too far ahead. You have mentioned that you won a couple awards during your time in the Air Force. I'd like to hear about those. I know one you said was the most improved airman. So what qualifies you to win that award? Like, what are the characteristics?
So I have to be a little bit, I have to admit, I'm pretty proud of that one. That I was awarded by my fellow trainees in basic training. So most improved airman was at the end of basic training, all the gentlemen were polled. Who do you think improved the most from being dropped off to actually graduating? And that was something that our drill instructors they put us in a closet and said, "You guys figure it out." They didn't want to be involved in it at all. So the group of 30 guys I graduated with, I should say we started out with like 65, 70 guys, and the actual graduating class was only 30, 35.
Only 30?
Yeah, they really kicked people out.
Wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, we were all in a room and just talking about it. And I remember, I wish I could remember his name. I think it was like Rotec or something like that. But one of my buddies recommended me, and the group was pretty quick to say, yeah, I think Auer did pretty good with that. So they all took the vote. They designated me to receive that award. I don't remember the term, but like the head trainee let the drill instructors know, like, hey, John's going to get this. And then so right before we actually officially graduated, the commander had a little ceremony with us where he presented me with that award.
Nice.
So I'm very proud of that one. I still have that one displayed at home. So
That's a
most
cool
improved
one.
airman.
So what do you feel like you improved in so much?
So I think it's a little hard to talk about, but I think it made me, I think basic really kind of kicked my butt, to be totally frank. I was kind of a troublemaker growing up. I didn't have much discipline. Didn't respect authority. You could ask my parents, they'll tell you all this is true. But yeah, I was a troublemaker. I really didn't want to do anything unless I felt like doing it. And I kind of honestly knew that, and I knew that wasn't the best way to be. So part of the reason I joined the military was like kind of toughened me up. So I think a lot of that like emotional stuff, really developing resilience and that discipline necessary for being a veteran or being in the military and becoming a vet. I think I got the award, so I think the guys in my group saw that. Like, hey, this John guy, he started out like kind of a troublemaker, but he stuck through it. He made it. Over 50% of the guys were kicked out. So I had what it took, apparently.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
And then you have another award that you received as well. So tell us about that.
The second award I'm most proud of is the Air Force Humanitarian Medal. Where I was stationed in North Dakota is along the Souris River Basin. It's a river that connects from, I don't remember where, but somewhere in Canada, and kind of streams down the center of North Dakota. And in 2011, I don't remember all the technical details, but somehow with some of the dams overflowing and improper maintenance of dams and snow melting up there, somebody did something wrong. The river basin completely flooded, and the town Minot, where the base was just devastated, absolutely devastated.
Wow.
It was a historic flood. A lot of the small villages in North Dakota, I mean, are literally like 100 people. There isn't even a gas station in some of these places, but they're all built up along the river. So like these small towns, I mean, just gone, just completely gone. So the whole base, all Minot Air Force Base, and then some of the reserve bases out there, the National Guard, the Air Reserve, the whole military presence in North Dakota just mobilized immediately to getting all the civilians, all of our neighbors, out of their homes, trying to save as much of their property as we could, try to save like cars or precious heirlooms or things like that, pets, and we knew that this flood was gonna happen. So we had like a week or so to really help pull as much of the community to safety as we could. And then after, of course, we were helping people rebuild their homes, actually build the homes, helping people settle in different like temporary refugee camps. The base, I know, like the men and women that worked on the services team, like they were cooking nonstop for the civilians. So the entire base, because of that response, was issued the Humanitarian Service Medal. And it was like the entire base, the entire military apparatus in North Dakota got that medal. And that's something I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
We just, as much as we could, stopped working to go help out our neighbors. And that was, it was a very tough situation, but helping out like we could. I mean, you see those commercials of like the National Guard, like helping people in New Orleans for Katrina. Like, man, you know, like I don't want anything like that to ever happen, but if it does, I'm going to be there to help. And that was so satisfying, and we did make a difference, and just helping out people as much as we could. So
Yeah, that's cool. I wonder if that, I mean, I've never heard of a whole base getting an award before, so that's really cool. I wonder if that's happened before, you know, I'm not sure, but congratulations on that too. That's pretty neat.
thank you.
I'd like to talk about your family. So I know you have a couple of things you want to talk about there too. So let's talk about your mom. You said your mom is a refugee. So do you want to talk about her?
Sure. My mother was born in El Salvador, and she lived there for the first 18 years of her life. And she came here, I don't remember the exact year, sorry, Mom, but she and her family came here to the United States legally through a refugee program. In El Salvador, the government and then the communist elements, foreign communist elements, wanted to take over El Salvador, and there really were no good guys in that situation, but there were atrocities from both of those two parties constantly, just constant bloodshed across the entire country. My mom was, yeah, her whole family, like she would tell me growing up, like they would hear bombs going off in the distance. There would be days when like they couldn't get any food. All the water they would contaminate the water even, so people couldn't even drink. Just running terror campaigns.
Wow.
So they did what they had to do to survive. Unfortunately, El Salvador, it's a very different country. That things are less stable down there. Now it's doing much better, but at the time it was a very very rough place to be. So it took them 4 years, unfortunately, to bribe El Salvadoran officials to process their paperwork to let them come here legally. But my mom always said, like, if they wanted to come to the United States, they wanted to be a credit to this nation. Back then, you could look up to the United States and see it really as a beacon of hope. So they wanted to come here, and it was very important for them to do everything right. Even if they had to bribe the El Salvadoran officials to sign off things, when they came to the U.S., they always wanted to do things right. So they did finally come here. All of them became citizens. All of them now are voting, and they're true Americans and everything like they just the real patriotic Americans. It's really fun to talk to them. They love this country so much for what it did for them. So yeah, my mom and her extended family, they were refugees from El Salvador, and just growing up, mom would always tell me, like, be a credit to this nation. Really, what we have here is very different than what we have in certain places of the world. So like that's a really important thing to protect, to fight for. Maybe that's part of the reason too why I joined the Air Force now that I'm talking about it, being the firstborn from that. But yeah, my mom met my dad in New Jersey, and an American boy and everything like that. So
And so from somebody from New Jersey, nonetheless. So that's like
yeah.
a very specific culture.
Exactly. Yeah. So my mom didn't even speak English when she first met my dad, so they would talk through handheld translation dictionaries. And
Are you kidding?
Dead serious, and it worked. It was love at first sight, even despite the language barrier.
I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So she had to be really proud of you when you joined. Like, what was her, did she give you any advice, or was she like, how did she feel when you were like, hey, Mom, I'm going to join the Air Force?
Oh, she was so mad.
She was mad?
She was mad. She did not want me to join the military.
Well, so she's patriotic, but I guess because you're her son, she wants to protect you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, but then I'm sure once you were in it, she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Like I said earlier, I was kind of a troublemaker. When I turned 18 and I decided I was going to join the Air Force, like, that was it. I was going to join. Like, hey, Mom and Dad, I'm not asking you for your permission, but like, I'm going to do this. And my dad was okay with it, but mom was like, no, you're not, Johnny. How could you do this to me? So we talked about it, but my mom came to talk to the recruiter and everything like that, and recruiters do what they do and everything like that. So it was a very long process, and she always she had her trepidations, but now after I've been out for a while, she's very thankful for that, and she was really proud. When I graduated basic and she came down to see me, she was beaming, and like you said, she really had that surge of patriotism in her.
And she probably saw that change in you too, which, obviously was very apparent to everybody that you were in basic training with. But then I'm sure to your mom too, like that moment must have been like, whoa, who is this? Right?
I hope so, yeah. Yeah.
So you're married.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So tell us about your wife. And I heard that you planned the whole wedding, you and her together, just everything.
That's true. My lovely wife, Hannah, her and I met on the internet like any millennial does. I don't think there's any way to meet anybody anymore.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we both are planners. We're both the oldest, so we're really type A, very aggressive go-getters. It can be kind of a problem because we don't know how to take breaks. We're always like, planning everything months and months and months in advance. So it can be a little too much sometimes, but we're working on that. But yeah, we planned our own wedding. Every single detail we planned. She had a lot of contacts with with tent people and food trucks, caterers. She had a lot of contact from one of her previous jobs. So every single detail we planned, and we absolutely loved it. It was a lot of work. Every single little detail was planned out meticulously, but man, that was a wonderful, wonderful wedding.
So did you got married before you started working here, I assume?
Yes.
So then that had to prepare you, some of that planning.
Exactly.
For what you're doing here, right? There is a lot of correlation between something like that. It's a huge event, right? You were an exchange student, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about that.
I was able to live in Japan in 2007. Had to remember, 2007. They had smartphones before we, like, everybody's walking around with little iPads that they had and everything. They were pretty big back then, and we still had flip phones over here. It was so cool to learn about a completely different culture to our own. The Japanese are lovely, lovely people, and at the same time, like, they're so different. So being a young kid, I think I was like 16, being a young 16-year-old kid and like really seeing that and realizing like how no matter those differences, like, humans are still humans. We still have the ability to love, and we still have like hopes and dreams. And boy, when I left my host family, like we were all so sad. We were so sad. I was only with them for a few weeks, but yeah, just a lot of things to learn and a lot of very valuable lessons to like actually experience as a young boy.
So what's one takeaway from that culture that you've been able, maybe you've implemented that in your life, or what's the one thing that you feel like you learned there that was most important?
The Japanese, in my experience, have a very dutiful outlook on life. I think it's pretty fair to say it's very general. They have a very dutiful sense, and they maintain a very strict sense of personal and familial honor based off them achieving their duty, and not only achieving their duty, but like doing it to absolute perfection, doing it to the not to their best, but to perfection. In America, as I understand it, we do our best, but in the Japanese way of understanding, you do the best. You're an instrument for the best, and that outlook was pretty valuable for me at the time, to understand like maybe the best isn't something you assign, but it's something collectively like discovered or uncovered, and you're sort of like an instrument in achieving that, as opposed to being a little bit more individualistic.
Wow, that's really interesting. Very insightful too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So last thing, this is the real fun fact here.
Okay.
You have a pet snake.
I have a pet snake.
What kind?
It is a yellow rat snake.
How big? Like, are they like huge, or are they like?
So he's pretty skinny, but he's very long. He's from like the middle of my torso down to my feet.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And so, what do you feed it?
Feed it rats.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yep.
That I always thought that was really cool. I feel like I saw that in like a high school science class at one point, like where they fed it the rat and it like, you watch it like kind of digest it, which is really fascinating. Do you have any fun story about your snake?
Quite a few. My sister and brother-in-law actually gave me my snake for my birthday. So there's a social rule, if you will, never give somebody a pet. Well, my sister and brother-in-law don't listen to that. So they gave me a pet snake as a gift. So another fun story, my lovely wife Hannah hates snakes very much. When we were first dating, I asked her, what do you think of animals? Oh, I love animals. Her family has like, to this day, they still have like chickens and ducks, turkeys. They had pet falcons for a little bit.
Wow.
Like they had all kinds of pets. And I said, oh, very cool. Like, do you ever have any reptiles? Like, yeah, we had turtles a little bit. Like, okay, what do you think of snakes? Like, I hate snakes. Snakes are the most vile, disgusting creatures. I would never date somebody who has a snake. And I get it. Snakes are pretty gross. I'm totally comfortable admitting that. It's totally fine that most people dislike them. Very much so. I totally get it. But yeah, so I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, we start dating a little bit, and then finally I ask her, like, you want to come over to my place for dinner? And she comes, and as soon as you open the door to my first apartment, the snake is like kind of right there, like right there as you walk in. You'll see it no matter what. So she sees it, like, you have a pet snake. I'm like, yes, I do.
Surprise.
Surprise. And the sweet darling, my wife, she decided that she will date somebody who has a snake.
Yeah.
So,
and marry, in fact.
Exactly. Indeed.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, big departure from talking about snakes, but this is the last thing that we always end with. A leadership lesson that you've learned either in your time at Greencastle or your time in the military.
Okay. I learned this in the military. Most disagreements I've had are usually not disagreements of worldview or lens or perspective. Sometimes they are, but usually most arguments are actually about word choices. Most arguments I've had, people are disagreeing on word choices. People will mean the same things, but for a variety of factors will use different word choices. And it's very essential to actually define your terms when you're having a disagreement or an argument to make sure you're saying what you're saying about the same idea. Just use with different words. Then you'll find if you do have one of those disagreements about worldview or lenses or perspective or something like that, you can actually have a conversation. And it'll sort of, I found that it kind of de-escalates things. Yeah, you know, you're arguing about something, but then once you understand, like, hey, I use this word for this, you use this word for this, like now we can actually talk about those different worldviews. Now we can actually talk about those differences. So I learned that in the military. I kind of learned that in the command and control center. Like you use standardized words to talk about standardized things. And I just would think about that, like, you know, why are we so particular? And then I kind of just picked up on that as some of my leadership experiences in the Air Force. So worked out pretty well for me.
That's really great advice. I don't think anybody said that yet, so I like that.
Okay,
I
cool.
do. That's very actionable. So.
Yes.
All
cool.
right, everybody. So like and subscribe to our channel, please. We really appreciate all the comments, interactions, shots from the Winchester, and on Greencastle. You know, we have LinkedIn, we have Instagram, all of that. Find us there. John Auer, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.